Imagine surviving a week without a proper meal, where the biting cold is secondary to the gnawing, constant hunger. Huddled together for warmth, the small band awaited the dawn, their fire now just embers. Then, on a bleak morning, a scout spots the impossible, a mammoth, a mountain of meat and salvation, not far away. For a heartbeat, silence falls. Every hunter knows the stakes. If this hunt fails, the long winter will surely claim them all. The weather turns, the wind picks up, and the weight of their survival rests on these sharpened stones. Modern movies often portray mammoth hunting as chaotic action, but the reality was a slow, agonizing test of patience and endurance. Before a single spear was thrown, days of tracking were required. They learned the herd's movement, identifying the weak. From this vantage point, the hunter analyzes the herd. Observing their drinking patterns is crucial for understanding migration routes and timing the approach. The prehistoric elk, facing harsh conditions, must navigate the deep snow, making it vulnerable to the determined hunter tracking its movements.
The first marker is here by the river. We loop around the ridge and converge at the target point just after sundown.
They didn't need to be the strongest. They just needed to make fewer mistakes than the giants they hunted.
Then, the moment arrives. The herd shifts. One mammoth separates, and the hunters move into their pre-planned positions.
With the initial strike landed, the hunters press the advantage, careful to avoid the mammoth's tusks.
Then, silence. The largest meal of their lives lies before them, but there is no time for celebration, only for survival.
They feel nervous, not triumphant. They know something the movies ignore. A dead mammoth is a beacon for every predator for miles.
Imagine a single drop of blood in a pool. It vanishes. But thousands of liters soaking into the snow, steaming in the freezing air, is a signal. The smell spreads, carried by the wind, reaching further every minute. The mammoth is no longer just food.
Somewhere in the hills, something has already noticed. The hunt was the easy part. Now, the race against time begins.
They don't admire the kill or pose beside it. They work with frantic, desperate efficiency to salvage what they can before others arrive. Time has suddenly become the most valuable thing they possess. Not the meat, not the hid, but the time to process it all. Every minute that passes makes the carcass harder to keep. The mammoth becomes a race against decay and the inevitable arrival of scavengers.
By applying principles of leverage and utilizing a pulley system, even the largest obstacles can be moved.
The mammoth wasn't coming home. This meant something dangerous. The home had to come to the mammoth.
This single realization transformed the hunt. They weren't preparing to leave. They were preparing to stay, right there in the open.
Think about that. Your entire food supply is sitting in the middle of an open valley. You can't hide it. You can't drag it away.
Eating together around the fire is central to many South Asian cultures. But as the evening deepens, the atmosphere can quickly turn tense.
The mammoth had solved one problem, finding food, but it created 3 new ones: protect it, preserve it, and share it.
This process, known as flint knapping, requires precision and force to create the sharp edges necessary for cutting and scraping. Opening the carcass wasn't a matter of minutes. It was hours of exhausting work, and every minute spent cutting was another minute the smell drifted. Then, something happened. One of the younger hunters looked up. A single black bird had landed on a nearby rock, waiting. To us, they were only ravens. To an experienced hunter, they were a warning, because ravens rarely kept a secret. Once they found food, the rest of the wilderness usually wasn't far behind. The mammoth had been dead for less than an hour.
No one said it out loud, but everyone understood the same terrifying truth. The hunt was over, and the race had begun. Not a race to eat, but a race to finish before something else arrived. The next visitor wouldn't be interested in sharing.
The mythical griffin, long thought extinct, preys on the unsuspecting hunters by the light of their own torches.
The mammoth was dead, but it was still a mammoth. 6 tons of flesh, bone, hide, and fat. More food than most people eat today. And somehow, every piece had to be saved before nature reclaimed it. The first instinct wasn't to cut, it was to think. They organized, without writing, without maps, without barking orders. Some gathered stone to resharpen blades. Only then did the real work begin. Every cut demanded their full weight behind the blade. The thick fur tangled around stone knives.
This thing is useless. How am I supposed to catch that with this?
Then came a choice, one that surprises archaeologists. The richest meat wasn't always the first thing they reached for.
Lean meat fills your stomach. Fat keeps you alive. It burns slowly, warms the body, and powers long days in freezing temperatures. To an Ice Age family, a thick layer of mammoth fat wasn't an extra reward. It was the reward. They knew its true value.
In this stylized winter scene, the hunter remains calm as she carries the fox through the snowy forest.
Finding thousands of calories locked inside a single animal, that opportunity might never come again.
As the carcass slowly opened, something remarkable happened. Nothing was wasted.
Not because ancient humans were noble, but because they couldn't afford to be careless.
The tongue, the organs, the marrow hidden inside massive bones, each offered something different. Nutrients, energy, ways to survive.
Modern supermarkets have taught us to value certain cuts over others. Ancient hunters saw the entire animal differently.
If it could keep someone alive, it mattered. Hours slipped by. The snow around the mammoth changed color. What had looked like a successful hunt was beginning to resemble a construction site, except every worker understood one brutal fact.
They weren't building something. They were racing against something invisible. Time.
Every hour made the meat slightly less valuable. Every hour demanded another impossible decision. Do you keep cutting?
Both choices had risks. Stay too long, you lose what you've collected. Leave too early, you abandon food you'll never replace.
There was no perfect answer, only better mistakes. By late afternoon, the first hunters began making trips away from the carcass. Not toward home, but toward temporary caches, sheltered places among rocks, snow-covered hollows, cold enough to slow decay. Couldn't throw a spear accurately, couldn't react quickly. For the first time that day, the hunters weren't the predators. They were vulnerable. The watchers on the ridge hadn't spoken for hours. Then, one of them raised a hand. Everything below stopped. Conversations ended. Every eye turned toward the horizon. At least, nothing obvious. Then, they saw it. Tiny shapes moving across a distant ridge. Not charging, not stalking, just watching. Too far away to recognize, too deliberate to ignore. The hunters didn't know whether they were wolves or something much more dangerous. So, they kept working, faster now, less carefully.
Every minute suddenly felt expensive, because the mammoth was no longer the only thing being watched. They were, too.
Before the sun disappeared behind the frozen hills, they would have to decide something far more difficult than how to butcher a mammoth.
How much of it could they carry before they were forced to leave the rest behind? At first, they refused to leave anything. Why would they? Every strip of meat had been earned. Every kilogram had cost energy, risk, possibly even lives. Walking away from any of it felt unthinkable. So they tried the impossible. They tried to carry everything. Imagine lifting a fully loaded suitcase. Now carry it across uneven ground, through knee-deep snow, with no road, no guarantee you'll make it home before dark. Now do it again, and again, until you've moved thousands of kilograms. The problem wasn't strength, it was distance. The mammoth hadn't died where they wanted it to. It had died where it chose to fall. And nature rarely makes survival convenient. Every trip away from the carcass came with another decision. Do you carry more or move faster? A heavy load meant fewer journeys, but it also meant exhaustion. A lighter load kept you quick, but forced you to return over and over.
Each return stole another hour. Each hour invited another visitor. The hunters weren't just transporting food, they were gambling with time.
Then someone made a suggestion. Don't carry the mammoth, carry the best parts. It sounds obvious, but it wasn't. Deciding what counted as the best wasn't simple. Do you choose the fattest meat, the organs that spoil first, or the hide for warmth?
Every choice meant sacrificing something else. For the first time since the hunt began, success wasn't measured by what they gained. It was measured by what they were willing to lose. This is one of the hardest parts of surviving that most of us never think about. Survival isn't about getting everything. It's about giving up the right things. Ancient humans understood that better than anyone. If carrying one extra piece of meat slowed the group, that decision could cost far more than the food itself. Because people don't survive winters, groups do. As the strongest hunters disappeared into the distance, those left behind.
Stone blades rose and fell in a steady rhythm. Nothing about the work looked graceful. It looked desperate, because it was.
The valley that had felt empty that morning no longer felt empty at all. The mammoth had fed everyone's hope, and now it threatened to divide it.